What's up, everybody? This is Raphael Vasquez here with another edition of the MMA Ratings Hangout. It is Sunday, January 25th, and there's a couple of good things to talk about. But first and foremost, I want to talk about Roy Billington. He's normally the co-host of this weekly show, but he has gotten a great opportunity with Bloody Elbow, so he won't be appearing at least regularly on this hangout. So, wanted to say congratulations to him and wish him all the best. Hope he's listening. Hope he checks out the show sometime this week. But yeah, Roy Billington will no longer be with us, which is a blessing for him. So yeah, happy for you, guy. Go do some great work with Lady Elbow. So yeah, moving forward, let's talk about the MMA action from last night. Who surprised? We ended up with a new number one contender for John Jones. Light heavyweight title in the first round of their, but we'll definitely talk about that in a moment. But one of the more definitely the biggest upset of the year so far because everyone figured that none of that came into play as Johnson just flipped him and then went in the uppercut to finish him off in the first round. But we're gonna go through the entire card, look at some of the bright spots, and talk about some of the things we saw. We're also gonna look at viewers for January 31st out again, which has a couple of big fights on it as well. So yeah, let's go ahead and jump in. So yeah, Anthony Johnson and Alexander. This is a pretty big story here because with either Johnson or Gustafsson, the UFC could have will make a big fight with John Jones. That's not the issue, but the Gustafsson rematch with Jones was definitely probably one of their bigger fights of the year that they could have made with how everything went down when they fought a couple of years ago. With it being so close and people still feeling that Alexander won that fight. He had grown so much to be a star in his own right. I mean, you could see just from the fight last night, the way they packed out that stadium, the way everyone was there to see him. He is definitely a star. I wasn't really sold on the idea of him being a star before tonight's event, but tonight's event proved me wrong. He is a star in the sport. People there love him, and they want to see him fight. They want to see him win. And this was a risky fight for the UFC, but it was a risky in a good way because Johnson is a fighter that people can rally behind. He has a good story about how he returned to this position of importance, and he definitely proved that he deserved to be in the main event picture now. This is probably his biggest fight and biggest win of his career at this point. He put Gustafsson away, and he did it like over 2 minutes. Like this fight was over well before this. There's controversy kind of surrounding the amount of punishment that Mark Goddard allowed Gustafsson to take at the end of the fight. I replayed it and I counted 26 unanswered shots. The time when Johnson dropped him to when Johnson turtled up and then rolled over to his side. Within that sequence, there was 26 at least. I may have missed one or two, but at least 26 shots that were landed before Gustafsson were counted out. And what makes it interesting is you wonder why that occurred. Did that happen because this was a main event with a lot riding on the line? Some people are saying that that's how it should go because with so much going on, and with this fight being for a number one contender slot, you don't want to see a quick finish, which definitely occurred twice throughout the night. But we'll talk about that later when we get there. But at the same time, where's the line? Where do you draw the line for protecting these guys? Because the doctor should not have taken that much damage. He shouldn't have taken that much damage from that point. I believe the fight could have been stopped when he was turtled up and took like 4 or 5 from from Johnson, who was on top of him because he wasn't even trying to move. He wasn't trying to roll over to his back. Wasn't trying to grab a single nut like that. He was taking shot after shot. And then you also have to wonder whether or not this was an opportunity or this was a play to give Gustafsson more time to recover just because he was a Swedish star. Fans were cheering for him. When he lost, the stadium was dead silent. This is the second time that occurred. We'll talk about that too. Also going down the line, but the stadium was dead. No one was cheering. Johnson was gracious in victory, but people still wanted to come there to see him win. So you have to wonder whether or not what the story behind that is, because Gustafsson was definitely out, and he should have definitely been finished. So where do we go from here? Obviously, Johnson finished against John Jones at some point in 2015 for the title. Jones is dealing with his issues right now, so we're not entirely sure when he will come back. So there's obviously that fight to be made, and then you have Gustafsson on the other side. There's guys that he could face. There's a lot of guys he could face, either coming off a win or a loss. Obviously, you have Daniel Cormier, who a win for either of those guys would keep them within the top 5 of their weight class. You have Ryan Bader, who got a big win on Saturday over Phil Davis. We'll talk about that as well, but that can kind of determine whether or not if Bader is going to ever challenge for the title. Most people know he's not, but you need to let that play out in the crowd or in the octagon. So there's that fight there as well. But we're not really sure post fight conference. He was talking about stepping away for a little bit. He was definitely emotionally drained after this fight. You could see him in the cage visibly upset. As soon as the fight was over, he was crying. Johnson was even saying that he felt bad for knocking him out because he saw that he was in pain, emotional pain, not even like physical pain. So yeah, it was a pretty big moment for MMA, and a good end to that moment. It was good to see Johnson kind of grow past all of his weight cutting issues and everything that caused him to get cut the first time. It's good to see him move beyond that. This is his 3rd win since being back in Octagon. So this is 9th straight win total. And Gustafsson, he's not completely done as a contender. It may take a little while longer to get that rematch with John Jones, but the potential is still there if he puts together, a 2 to 3 fight win streak and Jones continues to dispatch guys in this weight class. Moving down, the co-main event on the card was Gegard Mousasi versus Dan Henderson. And what was interesting about this was the exact opposite situation than the main event. Um, Leon Roberts called the fight at 1 minute and 10 seconds in the first round. And it looked very questionable because Dan Henderson took a shot. He was rattled and then fell back against the cage. And Gegard jumped on him, hit him once, and then went to hit him again and stopped because he is saying that he felt like Dan was out. And then Leon Roberts pounced on Gegard to break him up. Dan Henderson obviously was still fighting as he grabbed for a single and goes to stand up. And he immediately questioned the stoppage. The fight community, most people are saying that the stop was too early. Obviously, Dana White tried to defend it, but it looked like a bad stoppage because we've even seen Dan Henderson time and time again take more damage. When he fought Shogun the second time and the first time, Shogun had him rattled. He was hurt, and he was able to continue fighting. Career, he fought that for as long as possible before being tapped out. So he should have been given more time for sure. And it would be unfortunate. He's obviously denying the idea of retiring, denying the idea of walking away from the sport. But it's still unfortunate to see him go down in that way, see him get hit like that. And it wasn't the fact that he got finished. That isn't my big ordeal. But At what point is enough enough? I wrote a piece this past week about Dan Henderson retiring, and I think it should be about that time where the UFC kind of ushers him out, even if he wants to continue fighting. They did that with Chuck Liddell. They did it with Matt Hughes, Stephen Bonner, Forrest Griffin. They kind of ushered those guys out of the way, and I think they should start doing the same thing with Dan. I understand, he wants to keep competing. He's 44 years old, but the thing that makes it so scary is that he's being knocked out now. Um, there was a time where you couldn't knock out Dan Henderson even if you hit him with a tree. He was just he was able to take so much damage that you get the opportunity to drop that massive right hand on someone, but that's not no longer the point anymore. That's no longer possible. Like he was rattled out off of a jab by Gegard. He was already hurt before then because he said that he couldn't see out of his right eye. I believe it was right. I think was his right eye, but he was having eye issues that occurred early from a jab. So at what point is enough enough? Do you allow him to continue fighting? And it seems like that's what he's going to do, and that's what the UFC is going to allow him to do at middleweight. So yeah, it's not really sure what's going to happen there. I'd like to see him retire. He doesn't have anything else to prove. Unfortunately, he was unable to grab a UFC title during his reign in the octagon, but it doesn't look like that's going to happen. We can't see him beating any of the top 185ers at this time. I don't see him ever beating Chris Weidman or John Jones. So really, at this point, maybe he should be talked to about leaving the sport. I think if the UFC did cut him or something like that, one of these smaller organizations would definitely snap him up. But I can see uh, Bellator immediately going after him because in him fighting, because he definitely wants to continue fighting. On the other side, you had Gegard Mousasi. Mousasi's always been kind of like a question mark. People pick on him because he's so stoic and he doesn't really say too much, but he, he's definitely a question mark at 185 because he has the skill set to beat just about anybody there from top to bottom. He fought a lot of guys, and he has to look great whenever he fights. He looked good for the brief moment here against Henderson. I definitely like this movement. I like how he was able to slip all of those right hands. I think Henderson threw like 3 or 4 big right hands, and he was able to easily avoid all of them and kept counter striking back. So he's obviously, man, he's very skilled in the sport. He's a multiple time champion, and I think he definitely flies deeply under the radar just because he doesn't talk a lot. He doesn't do a lot of interviews. He doesn't say anything precarious or anything like that when he's promoting fights, but he's definitely someone worth watching. I would like to see him keep fighting. I think he asked for someone in the top 5. There's a lot of good guys there. Since the Romero Jacare fight was pushed back, obviously he can't fight Jacare right now because he just was recently defeated by Sosa, but he does have a win over Jacare, right? And there's other guys there for him to keep on facing. Let me see what names pop up. But as I was saying, there are definitely a lot of guys that are available for Musashi to fight at this time. I would definitely want to see him against any of the top five guys at 185. He already has a loss to Machida. He definitely has a loss to Jacare. If they can't get that fight against Romero May due to health issues, maybe they can insert him fight Romero at some point this year. But let's continue moving on, and that'll take us to the Ryan Bader versus and a lot of people were down on this fight coming into the card because it was two wrestlers, and they figured it was going to be, I hate to use the word boring, but they figured it was going to be a boring fight just looking at the styles. But it was a lot of stand-up action. Phil Davis went for 9 takedown attempts and could not get Bader down to the ground. And this brings me back to a question I've really had about Davis for since the Rashad Evans fight. I understand that he was a fantastic coach at Penn State, great national champion, great wrestler there, one of the best that probably the team has ever seen. But there is a vast difference between MMA wrestling and regular freestyle, collegiate folk style, however you want to call it, style wrestling. There's a big difference in this fight. A takedown. He shot in, and this is partly with his technique because he seems to failed on every one of his takedown attempts from the very start to the end of the fight. And Wilson came back and took his back standing. Davis for a weird Granby type roll, which led to a scramble on the ground. But that was right at the end of the fight. So you have to wonder what they can do with Davis. He is a viable competitor at light heavyweight, but it's just not at that point where he's going to yet. He's just not there. He lost this fight, which kind of would have set him up for a about Johnson or whatever. But he's lost big fights to important fighters, so he can fight at any point in time. And then the same for Ryan Bader. Bader's put together some good runs as of late, and he's someone that is worth watching. He's always because like how this guy comes out uh, to the cage, he usually puts on a pretty good show where someone gets knocked out. He hasn't used his wrestling to like control guys throughout fights as much anymore. He definitely looked pretty solid at that weight class, but now with that win there, it'll be interesting to see what they do with the next. Because right now there's still guys like the Buff and that I would still take. He just beat Phil Davis, so you could probably see him moving into like the sixth or fifth position. There's Anthony Johnson, who's going to get a shot. Maybe place him against Daniel Cormier and see how that fight goes. I kind of called for that to be Cormier's first fight at light heavyweight when he made the move down. So now would be a good time to kind of make that fight because it would keep Cormier viable if he wins. And if Bader did take a decision there, then it would be even more uh, fodder to say that maybe he is ready to get another shot at Jones and not be such a gatekeeper anymore. So there's a lot of good direction you can take Ryan Bader at this point in time. I'm looking forward to seeing what comes next for the Arizona State wrestling. So, at the Sicilian and Cure. And this fight had knockout written all over it because Cecilia is definitely a big hitter, and you could tell right from the start he's a big hitter who likes to load up on that one shot to finish his opponent. And Akira Horasani, he's been stopped all 6 times be a knockout, and his chin just isn't what it used to be. And just watching this fight, the way he was holding his hands and his movement, he was letting Cecilia get too close to him, and he was letting Cecilia cut off too much of the cage, even though he was using his movement to try to get out of the way. Cecilia was getting too close to him, and you just kind of felt like that big shot was coming. And as soon as it was thrown and landed, man, you knew Akira was out. He was out on his feet, before his body even crashed to the ground. It's unfortunate because this is probably going to be the fight that gets him cut from the promotion. But man, he just anymore like he used to be able to. Because even when he was clipped by I can't remember who he was disqualified again, but if he had his nose severely broken, everything started falling apart. Because then since then Poirier knocked him out, and even though he's his movement has gotten so much better, he's got so much been able to take a punch like he used to, just really proved it here. So you put him out violently, and I think that'll be the end of his. This was a big one because it allowed him to get some exposure at featherweight. He's definitely not a top 10 guy. And are already scheduled to fight in April, which is kind of a long way off to wait. So there's guys that is also scheduled to fight as well. So both of those names kind of jumped out to me as someone to pair him against, because I always like to see. I always want to see those big hitters go up against each other. But he's someone I want to see fight again soon. I think this was a good win to kind of introduce him to the mainstream fan. The guys definitely knew who he was, but they didn't know he had knockout power like that. So it'll be moved up the ladder and give him some more exposure going forward. Let me see. There's maybe like a fight this journey, or Nicholas is already scheduled too. So there's plenty of featherweights on the roster that the UFC can place him against. He did what he needed to do to gain some attention here. He definitely silenced the crowd big time. Knockout. So he's someone worth watching going forward. We're going to move on down to the aspect. And even though this part of the card had like a lot of unknown guys, there's still a lot to take from what we saw before the main event. There were some good fights. Albert Samenov against Nicholas Musoki. Musoki was kind of the favorite. Well, he definitely was the betting favorite coming into this fight, but Samenov on a clinic about how to kind of strike and like move, strike and move, strike and move at the same time. He was circling out perfect, striking off of the center line very well, where he was cutting his angles very well, landing combinations. Musoki started well, but once Albert started racking up the shots, Musoki started going for takedowns without like really technique. Started rushing in and just not looking good, looking desperate, which allowed Samenov to look even better, stepping off and landing more strikes. So it was definitely a clinic. That's a good fight to go back and watch. Even though it wasn't like any drops or any knockdowns or any controversy in that fight, it was definitely enjoyable for me. King Robertson looked good with his knockout over Sutton Alaviv. He did that in less than 3 minutes in their first round, where he landed a big shot off of a spinning back kick. So he threw a spinning back kick that kind of grazed Robertson's midsection. It didn't displace him enough, didn't move him back enough, and allowed him to counter with a left hand that caught Sultan right in the side of the head, dropped him. Sultan tried to pop back up, but Robertson was right on top of him, many more shots. King Robinson's won, I think, 3 or 4 straight. So, it'll be interesting to see what happens next for him. I think he's going to be offered up to, some of the guys that are more towards the top 15 of the weight class. But this is definitely a good win for him. He's unassuming. People really weren't too
big on him coming into this fight, but that was a good win for him. Makan Amir Kahani looked fantastic in his 8 second stoppage over Andy Ogle. It was kind of controversial because he caught Andy with a flying knee to the body, which pushed Andy back against the cage, and he hammered him with like maybe 3 or 4 shots before Kevin Stocky dove in to stop that fight. Andy Ogle contested it, but man, he tried to double leg the ref right after the stoppage, which is normally a horrible sign about whether or not if you're still in it. So Team Alpha Male guy was definitely crushed there. This may be his last fight in the UFC as well because I think he's gone 1-5 in the octagon since being here. But man, Americanian definitely gained some fans on Saturday. He walked out of there with a bonus, and I don't know if you saw the post-fight press conference, but he's telling his story about how he lives in a house with his sister and his mother. It's 1 bedroom place, and his mom sleeps on the floor, and he sleeps on the couch, and his sister sleeps in the bed, or something like that. Something ridiculous about his struggles in Finland. So he has a good story. He seems like a good guy. He calls himself Mr. Finland, the most attractive man in the country, which is pretty funny. He is definitely a talkative guy. And that's what fans are liking right now. So if the UFC ever was to make a trip over to Finland, he's definitely their guy. They could also, continue featuring him on these Fight Pass events to allow him to build his brand, to build himself, and build himself a fan base in Europe, so more people can continue watching. But he has the violence, and he has the ability to finish guys, and he also showed that he can talk too, which is big at this point in time in the sport. Keep going down. We got Nikita Krylov against Stanislav Netkov, where Krylov finished with a standing guillotine in a minute and 24 seconds. And as Jordan Green of Sherdog calls him, Nicky Thrills got the job done again. This guy's kind of like the most him. It's either him or Stefan Struve for the title of the most awkward looking mixed martial artist that continues to get the job done because he looked like he didn't have any problem with Metcalf. This is his third win in the UFC. I think it's his second straight. And I used to laugh at this guy thinking that he was brought into the UFC just to get pounded and get sent away. But he is doing well. He's cut down to 205. He's looked a lot better in his fight. This one here, man, he was in control from start to finish. Um, Metcalf went for a ill-advised takedown, had his head stuck in there. Um, the scramble kind of started on the ground where Krylov was going for what looked to be like a gator roll, but he was going to the wrong direction, which caused them to feet, and Metcalf got his neck caught there. But man, Nicky Thrills got another win in the UFC, and he's just it's almost like I watch his fights just for the comedy effect. What's going to happen? But he did what he needed to do there, and he got the win. Murabak Taisumov got the win of Anthony Christodoulou. This was a one-sided fight. At no point at all did Anthony look like he wanted to be in there, especially after he started getting pounded. Um, and not too much to take from that fight. I don't think Anthony deserves to be at this level, just looking at the way he fought there. Um, Murabak did what he needed to do. He got that guy out of there. He just looked after he started taking a little bit of damage, he looked like he just didn't want to be in there at all. Miroslav Bektic was a big prospect coming into the card Saturday. A lot of people were looking forward to seeing him fight. He dominated Paul Redmond. I think he got 10. He got two 30-27s and then a 30-25 as well, 30-26, something ridiculous. But he definitely dominated Paul Redmond, kept him down, had some great takedowns against the cage, some very technical takedowns against the cage, and some good scrambles, but he always remained on top. He held his opponent there and did damage while he had Paul Redmond there. He had him cut up pretty badly. Once the fight was finished, it was blood all over Redmond's face. It wasn't the type of fight that would get people excited, to get people excited to see him fight again, but it's definitely something to point to if this guy goes on a run. He's fighting at an APT, getting a lot better from what I hear. His first fight against Chris Siri was definitely more difficult for him, but he took this fight here and he definitely did very well from start to finish. He controlled the fight throughout the contest, and he's someone worth watching at 145. He's a guy that a lot of people have high hopes for. A lot of people are anticipating to do great things. So I look forward to seeing what's next from this guy and seeing who he's placed against. Victor Pesta withstood some powerful shots from Konstantin Irokin in their first round of their fight, and then he just dominated Irokin from that point on. This, you know, Irokin is one of those guys who came into the UFC with a whole bunch of first round finishes, and but at heavyweight you just can't go in there expecting to knock guys out. There's guys that can withstand that type of damage. At this level, they can find ways to kind of let you punch yourself out, and that's exactly what happened to uh, Eroy in this fight here. What's disheartening to me is that even though Hester he didn't really surprise as a heavyweight. I'm not interested in seeing him fight again. It's just I guess just the status of the heavyweight division right now. There's just aren't guys that make you and scream and cheer that actually want to see them fight. There's maybe like 4 or 5 heavyweights at this point in time that are just like at the top of the at the top of weight class at this point in time when it comes to the best fight on the whole card would where series um maintain position and not stay off the end. So he definitely did it cost me for someone like that. Even though that's a big jump in the weight class, is definitely something where off from the win just because he had more tools and it happened throughout the team. I don't remember what the scores were. Still any decision. Everything see on the Fox 14 is definitely a good, very good, very good, and it's some good knockout from start to finish. Card from start to finish. I enjoyed it from I enjoyed the whole event forward. And let's look forward at UFC 183, which is at the top of the card. We have the returning Flash Anderson Diaz. number one in line for a title shot. Opinion, and then I understand this is a fight where this I don't need to be everyone wants to sit and watch, but I'm not. However, there is Calvin Gastelum and Tyron. Calvin Gastelum is a star at welterweight into the cage, but Tyron made a title shot. But I don't on board. This is not fast if he puts himself in a position where he's invincible. He's had like some face a guy like was he's going to be able to. You got Joe Lozon out for other guys. Uh, and if Joe's about that because we're fighting both South Roach. I think he. Yeah, I understand now. Allow him to fight. He's definitely a couple other guys more so. Thiago Alves who just like know to what he definitely have ability. Hmm. Well, I definitely think Jordan Meade has more ability to win that fight against Alves, but you can never really count Iago out. He's looked good since coming back from his time away from the sport. So that's another fight I'm definitely looking forward to. Misha Tate, Sarah McMahon, man, women's bantamweight is kind of flown under the radar, and this fight has definitely been given some ill justice. And when it comes to promotion, I would obviously switch this fight out immediately for Tim Boach and because these women are both of them are at top of their weight class. I would love to see McMahon get another shot. Tate has already had two, but she's very competitive against everyone else in the weight class. So this fight has some value. I think it's going to be the main event of the preliminary card, which is not a bad spot, but this fight is more important than it being Derek Brunson and Herman. I think someone's going to get put out there. I don't think that fight's going to go all 15 minutes. And then there's Ian McCall and John Lineker. And this fight is clearly set up to determine who's going to face Demetrius Johnson for the flyweight title. But it's so far down the card that it's almost going to be overlooked. This fight should be on the main card as well. And it's unfortunate that it's not. Again, UFC isn't really pushing their lighter weight class. They want these guys to be just as big stars as the other weight classes so that they can carry a pay per view. But then they do stuff like this where the number one contender is going to be fighting so early in the night that no one's really going to even notice where he is. So like it's unfortunate that they're making this decision when it comes to this weight class. I see that there's some other. I'm looking forward to the Diego Granadal Jim Hedges fight too as well. Jim Hedges is someone who had a lot of hype about him, so he took those two losses in the UFC back training with the Ricardo Almeida team. So eventually you'll see what he's able to do. So looking down the card, I want to go ahead and put my picks out there. I'm going to try to something new this time and talk about who I expect to win. Obviously, in the main event, I want to take Anderson Silva over Nick Diaz just because I feel like Silva will be able to outstrike Diaz on the feet. Diaz definitely has that ability to volume strike, but he's been outstruck by guys like Carlos Condit before. I think Silva just has like if he returns to form, he definitely has the best striking, some of the best striking in the sport. So unless if Diaz can make this ugly, I'm going to take Silva to take this fight either with a late stoppage. No, I'm not going to say a late stoppage, but because the Diaz brothers don't really get stopped. But I think it'll be a long night for Nick. But he's going to get paid well. We all know he's going to get paid very well. So it'll be worth his time. Tyron Woodley against Kelvin Gastelum. I'm going to go with Gastelum on this one. I think it's his time. I've never been a fan of how Woodley fights when he fights against a guy that does not relent, against someone who does not allow him to break his will. I think Gastelum is that type of competitor who, Woodley's going to have to put him out to put him away. And I just don't think he's going to do that. I think Gastelum's very, very smart with his fighting. I think he's going to be the longer fighter coming into this one. So I'm going to go with him in the main event. Joe Lozon versus Al Clinton. I'm going to go with Al on this one because I'm a fan of Joe Lozon, but I just don't like the way he kind of punches himself out in the early in his fight. I think he's going to definitely have Al in some bad spots, but as the fight goes on, I just think he's going to be able to. He's not going to be able to weather Al's storm for the second and third rounds. Dallas Flatus versus Tim Boach. I'm going to go with Dallas Flatus here. After he's on a 4-fight winning streak to come back into the octagon, 4 or 5 fights. He's slowly reemerged in the middleweight division here. Maybe I was talking earlier about guys who face Gegard Mousasi. That's a good fight right there as well. Getting if whoever wins this fight facing Mousasi next. So I'm definitely taking Dallas Flatus in that fight. Jordan Mee versus Thiago Alves. I'm going with Jordan Mee because I just feel like he has more tools to win that bout. Misha Tate, Sarah McMahon. This is probably the toughest one for me to pick, but I'm going to go with Sarah McMahon because I feel like she can do everything that Tate has been doing for so long in her career, but she could probably do it better. I see her being able to take Tate down and win a 3 round like that. Derek Brunson, Ed Herman. I'm going to go with I'm going to go with Derek Brunson, and Herman's a favorite of mine, but I just think that his time's kind of passed as well. Ian McCall versus John Bennett. I'm going to go with Ian McCall based on experience, and not necessarily experience because he has less. He definitely has less fights than Lineker, but he has a lot more big fight experience. I think he can kind of um, negate John's power with his movement and his speed. So I'm definitely going to take Ian McCall in that. Tom Watson and Rafael Natal. I'm going to go with Sapo in this fight just because I feel like he has a better tools to win. Watson's definitely a power striker trying to knock guys out. And I just think that Natal will be able to negate that, make this fight ugly, and get a decision to win. I'm taking Jim Hedges over Diego Brandon. And yeah, I'm not really too concerned about the other two fights down the um, down the card. But this is probably one of the first times in a long time I'm more excited about of a pay per view than definitely watch tweet everybody, but I plan on looking forward and watching that whole card. So that's definitely UFC 173 on no other promotions. There's other news going on in the world of combat sports. Obviously, you know what's going on with Manny Pacquiao. It looks like he's going to duck. Excuse me, looks like Floyd Mayweather's going to duck Manny Pacquiao again. I hope he doesn't take that fight with Miguel Cotto again. But if he does, it'll be unfortunate. It'll be sad to see. So we definitely have that story that's growing and growing big right now. We had a good boxing match last night as well, and it was a good fight because it just because of the way UFC on Fox 14 kind of closed out right on time for you to be able to flip over and catch the main event between hold on. But it allows you to catch the Rios Alvarado rematch in which Brandon Rios just basically walked through Mike Alvarado, finished him between the third and fourth round. There was a referee stoppage, so that was a good violent um, boxing match there. And what else we have? Krokop is actually returned to the UFC. He's planning on fighting in April, and it'll be a rematch with him and Gonzaga. If anyone, I remember where I was for that fight, so that'll be definitely. I may actually watch that. I won't be too excited. I think that the fight's going down in Poland, so it gives them someone to headline that big event there. What else is going on in the sport? Obviously, 2015 has gotten off to a great start for the UFC. Last week's fight with Conor McGregor was one of their highest rated shows on free television. Yet, they brought, I'm not sure what the figure was, but I definitely saw that it was one of the highest rated shows. So they had that success. They had the success of UFC 182, where they brought in, it's reported they brought in more than 750 buys. So they've gotten off to a great start of 2015. It'll be interesting to see what this card can do at UFC 183. Then that'll give us a little bit of a break between the UFC Fight Night that's headlined between Stephen Thompson and Brandon Thatch, which is going to be a good fight. People may be down on that card because Mike Brown is off of it now, but that's going to be a good fight, people, because those two guys are very violent. They both bring they I mean, there's no other way to put it. They definitely both bring the violence, and someone's going to go out that night. And then you also have Max Holloway, Cole Miller. Someone's getting there. So like, there's definitely a good card worth watching. It's a free event, so yeah, it'll definitely be worth watching for sure. But I think that's going to be a crazy fight, crazy main event there. So there's a lot of good things going on in MMA going forward. As always, you can check out MMARatings.net to see what we have going on. Definitely go there to rate the fights from last night, rate the fights throughout the year, and tell us who you think had the best performances. Check out the pieces that I will be writing. Adam Martin's also there, Nathan McCarter, Michael Ford. Check out our pieces there. I definitely have some work to do for this week, so I will have some stuff up there. But be sure to follow us. You can follow me at rgarcia_sports. You can follow our MMA ratings at MMA ratings on Instagram and Twitter. Check us out on Facebook as well, and be sure to always go to MMAratings.net to catch up on the latest news from the sport, latest videos, catch our podcast, and also be able to rank the fights. And again, this is Rafael Garcia, and enjoy the rest of your Sunday.